Welcome, endurance enthusiasts. I'm your host, Bruna.
And I'm your host, Fabi. You're tuning into Human Endurance, the podcast where we aim to inspire you with stories of achievement, motivation, and self-fulfillment.
We'll connect you with humans pushing boundaries, breaking barriers, and discovering the joy of endurance sports.
Join us on this journey of self-reflection and personal growth. Let's go the distance together.
Welcome, Peter. Welcome, Molly. I'm super excited to have you guys on the podcast. I feel like we have so much in common. Married couples working together, podcasting together, doing a lot of endurance things. So that's quite special. Welcome to Human Endurance.
Awesome.
Thank you so much for having us. Yeah, I'm so excited. I hope we get to talk about the working and training together aspects, because I'm sure we have similar good things and bad things, maybe.
Definitely some good and bad.
For sure. Welcome to the podcast. And let's start right with the first question. Can you introduce yourselves to the audience?
For sure. Yeah. So I'm Peter Glassford, and I'm one half of the Consummate Athlete podcast, and we also do coaching. And so that's what I do, is I'm a coach. And then my wife, Molly, here is an author and writer. You've probably seen her in many popular magazines, but she also has her Strong Girl Publishing company that she produces books of all types.
Yeah, that pretty much sums it up.
Okay. I tried to do it. Sometimes we do a little bit of everything. So I tried to be concise.
Good. We like concise. So, Peter, Molly, let's start by talking about your story. So you guys met at a race in China, a bike race, which sounds really cool. And now you run the Consummate Athlete together. How did you go from meeting each other at this race and then building coaching and content together?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, it's a lot. Yeah, I guess. So we were at this race in China, a cyclocross race. So
China's first UCI cyclocross race.
Yeah. So my cycling career went fairly well, but I was not famous by any stretch. I was very moderate, but it was the most business trip, trip or race of my, it was all expenses basically to fly 12 hours from Canada to China to race for a 1 hour bicycle race in China. And it was just the oddest thing, but a bunch of us went in the fall. It seemed like a good sort of adventure. And then, at the end of it all, I didn't do well in the race, but I did end up right at the last minute, just saying to this woman that was standing there, sort of got talking, and she said she was going to go to California. And I said, well, I happen to have a beach house in California this winter.
So naturally, I was very interested. It wasn't until I realized that he actually just rented this house with a bunch of dudes. But by then we were already dating. So I was kind of locked in. Fast forward, 13 years. We've been married for 10. We started the podcast 10 years ago.
That's right. Well. Yeah, we have our anniversary this year. So we're going to have you all on as part of our 10-year celebration as well. So we're excited for that. But I don't know, was there I don't know if there's a big story on how we got started, but we slowly just realized that we love this idea of sort of being active and doing lots of different sports. Molly had come from a bit of a triathlon and cyclocross background, which both sort of obviously lend themselves to multiple, cyclocross has running and biking in it. And
you couldn't just let me have triathlon. We should add the year after we started the podcast, 2017, of course, he was sort of figuring out what he wanted to do athletically. And he's like, I think we should do, let's just do Ironman again. I had done one, and suddenly he's like, I'm going to do first triathlon. Let's make it an Ironman. So I had to learn how to swim.
Did you go from 0 to Ironman, Peter?
Well, I did. But I mean, there's my whole career, again, growing up in Canada, there was always cross training all through the winter. So we would ski and run, and my coach coming up was a cross-country skier originally. So we did lots of things like pole walking and pole running and striding and then skiing and these different things. Strength was always part of it. So I was just always curious about cross training. Of course, I was also a kinesiology student. So, just into every sport and trying every sport. And I think that was what really pushed us both towards this concept that we've called sort of this consummate athlete idea or philosophy, where we try and encourage people to keep their movements and their mobility as wide as we can as we pursue specific goals as well. And that's really sort of how we've gone about, or what we've looked at when we do our podcast, when we do our coaching, and why people come to us is just because we are really into this idea that like you can do different sports, you can include different movements in your training and in your life.
Nice, great. Yeah, that's actually also a reason why I'm personally so much into triathlon, because it's a sport of cross training, even though you call it one sport, right? So I really like it. And since I'm doing triathlon, I'm also way less injured. I love just swimming for, relaxing my body. And yeah. So Molly, I would love to understand a bit more from you, because you did the Ironman triathlon, right? First, and I'm curious to understand how this was for you, and then also your cyclocross career, and then why and how you transitioned to ultra running, how this came about.
Yeah, for sure. So Ironman really was kind of the first thing I was interested in. I got into triathlon early in college. Just my dad had done a couple triathlons back in like the early 80s. There's actually a picture of my mom she's pregnant with me like 3 days before I was born, holding like a big sign that says "Hang in there, Herf," and it was my dad running past her wearing, like it's the 80s, so he's like in a Speedo doing the triathlon, like it's hilarious. And that was his last triathlon, was 3 days before I was born. So I really wrecked his triathlon career. But I kind of eventually came to it in college just as a triathlon seems like a thing that you can do. So I guess I'm going to learn how to bike and swim and run. So naturally then you're like, oh, well, what can I do in triathlon? And then you see Ironman and you're like, oh, well, I guess I should do an Ironman. I don't know if that's how your brain works too, but like it's how mine works, I guess, which leads to the ultra running eventually. But so I was doing triathlon, got into Ironman. My first Ironman was a disaster. Like I finished it, but when I tell you, I don't think I fueled like at all, really.
Oh my God.
Crazy hard on the run. It was Louisville in August, so it was, I think, 110 degrees Fahrenheit that year. It was boiling hot. My dad is on his mountain bike just riding around the course, just like shrieking at me to like drink more Gatorade or something. I don't even know.
And why did you not feel at all? Did you just not know?
Oh.
Hey everyone, if you're in Zurich, I have something super special coming up. On March 26th, Fabi and I are launching our startup Algo to the world, and we would love to have our listeners at our launch event. Spots are limited, so grab yours at the link in the show notes. Hope to see you there.
Like, it was the early aughts. We didn't know. No one told us we should have like 30 grams or 60 grams or 100 grams of carbs per hour. Like, we were from the like old school of like, eating is cheating is really kind of like how...
Well, I think there was that, but then also just like it was so hot and you were young and you like hadn't necessarily trained for it. But
no.
Yeah, like you were probably planning like maybe, a gel or like an original gel that was small.
I know. I had Cliff shot blocks, which are the most useless things to be trying to eat in a triathlon when it's that hot.
Yeah.
All I really remember from that race is like sitting in, and I was vegan at the time, so like afterwards, all I remember sitting in the shower, drinking from a can of vegetable broth and just crying. So super good experience. Obviously, I was excited to do it again. So that was, I think, it was like almost 10 years before I did another Ironman. That was my first and only until 2017.
But you did some other triathlons and some Xterra, so you started edging into off-road.
Well, and then so I was on the Rutgers cycling team to get ready for triathlon because I was like, I need to work on my bike. And then it turned out just the way points and stuff worked with collegiate scoring, they could get a lot more points if I raced cyclocross for the team because they didn't have any women who were racing. So they were like, here's a bike we're going to lend you. You're going to race cyclocross. And I was like, well, I guess I'll try this. Sure. And I had so much fun. I was so bad at it. I'm terrible at cycling because it's 45 minutes. I don't do 45 minutes. I do like 10 hours plus.
Too short.
Way too short. But I still loved doing it. It was such a fun group of people. I mean, the people who race cyclocross are just cool. So I was doing that. I was writing about it. That's actually why I was in China. I was writing for a magazine about cyclocross. So I was there as a journalist, not a racer.
Could you explain to our listeners, because cyclocross...
it's a weird sport.
Yeah, like not a lot of listeners might know what it is. Could you explain the concept of it?
This is true, yeah. So cyclocross, if you kind of take mountain biking and road cycling and then smush them together, onto a smaller track course. So it's usually a course that's about 3 kilometers long. So you're on a bike that looks like a road bike, but then when you look closer at the tires, they're actually like really knobby and kind of look more like mountain bike tires. You're going as hard as you can for a number of laps, but usually around 45 minutes. And there are obstacles all over the place. You're going through mud, you're on grass, you're on sand, you're on pavement. They actually put barriers up. So you have to either bunny hop over them or get off your bike and run with your bike over them and then hop back on your bike.
Why do people like this?
It's so dumb. It's so dumb.
Well, it's like Belgium and the Netherlands. It's like almost their, I don't want to say it's their national sport, but it's like pretty close. Like I would compare it to hockey for us. Like the environment is like hockey. Like they cordon off like these parks or like even around like the Citadel in Namur and in Belgium, right? And it's just like what a like there's fries and beer and like every type of person. Like they're not all just cyclists or triathletes or whatever, right? Like they're all these just quote unquote normal people just eating fries and having a beer and smoking and just watching.
It's so funny.
And they hate, like the Belgians like tend to not like the Netherlands people, and it's just
Typical.
like yeah, right.
It's so good. Yeah. If you're interested in watching any bike racing, watch cyclocross.
Yeah.
Don't watch anything else. Everything else is like boring.
And there's highlights on YouTube. Yeah, it's so amazing. Like the athletes are like their best. Like so, most of the like really top road people now do it, like Tom Pidcock and Vanderpool and Mariana Voss and what is
Pauline Fran-Prevot has been world champion. Yeah.
And then we're forgetting who was the winner.
Lucinda Brown.
Thank you. I was like, we should mention her as well. Yes, so she is also like tops athlete. So yeah, it's an amazing sport. Like once you get into it, it's just like the equipment and the athletes are so dynamic and yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And sorry, I interrupt you with the question, but then how did that move to ultra running?
How does that move to ultra running? Actually, it was really because I love cyclocross so much that I transitioned to running, because I was so into cyclocross that I actually ended up managing a cyclocross team that was racing all over North America, all over Europe. Peter was coming with me to some of them. You did some mechanic stuff for the team, but it was Jeremy Powers, Ellen Noble's team, Aspire Racing, years and years ago. But I was traveling with them so much, and I was on the road, and, you know, we're in Belgium, we're in the Netherlands, and I don't have a bike. So I can't really train for triathlon. There's no pools around. I can't really train on the bike. Can't really train in the pool. So what do? Well, I run. So I guess I'm going to run. And then actually it was really just dumb luck that I got into ultra, because I got invited I got like a PR pitch that was like, hey, Under Armour is hosting a mountain run in Vermont. Like, do you want to do it? And they had a 5K and like a 10K and a 50K. And I was like, could I do the 50K? Like, would that be cool? And I think they were really put off by me. They're like, don't you want to do like the 5K or something? Like, wouldn't that be more reasonable? I was like, no, I'll do the 50K. And that was my first mountain run ultra. And I absolutely loved it. Also, frankly, it's the first race. I think I forget if I was second or third. Either way, there was a giant check. And it was the first time I'd ever gotten a giant check in a race. It was like for like $200, but it was still one of the massive ones.
Giant. Yes.
I've gotten one of those too in a race. It was only like 10 euros or something.
Doesn't matter. You're like, giant check. This is my sport. Yep.
The check costs more than the value of the check. Yeah.
Yeah, so then I was hooked. Yeah, and then ultra is so problematic, because you do a 50K, then you say you're doing ultra, and then someone's like, oh, have you done, what 50 milers have you done? And then you're like, well, I guess I should do a 50 miler. And then someone's like, well, what about the 100K? And maybe I should do 100K. So I've decided, I've like called it 100 miles is my absolute max. We are not going to the 200. We are not going to the 250. That's dumb. Not doing it. Stopping at 100.
That's what you say now.
Let's talk in 1 year. Really cool. I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about you guys' philosophy with the Consummate Athlete. So you talk about the 4 C's, cross-training, consistency, confidence, and community. Mm-hmm. Can you explain what this framework means in practice and why you built your approach around it?
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, I think Molly's story that she just sort of told us there is like sort of like the descriptor, right? Like there's this thing that like so life gets busy. You know, she liked cycling, but I wouldn't say Molly was like. Would you say you weren't like the tops like rider, obviously, right?
Well, like I say, bad at cyclocross.
Yeah, and so she loved the community in cyclocross, and still I would say really identifies with the community in cyclocross, like as like her people, and like loves writing about it. Like she has a book, was on sort of like the history of cyclocross in the U.S. specifically, I think. And so that's like community, but then she hadn't really found that like fit for herself, right? And that's where she sort of sampled sports, which is a big thing we love about cross training as people, even adults. We often talk about sampling sports for kids, right? Like put your kid in all the gymnastics and they'll find the sport that fits, that they like. But I think for adults, because we are changing and our tastes change, our bodies change, our abilities change. If we're sampling these sports, if we're familiar with all these sports, just like Fabi has swimming and probably some strength and then some running and some biking, then we're sort of positioned that if our bodies change or we get injured or we have to go on business travel like all the time, like some of the executives I work with, now you have an option where you could go swimming in the pool or you could go running or you can go do strength and you can stay consistent, right? So we're sort of using cross training to stay consistent. And the other thing we find is that like for a lot of us, there's like this social or community aspect that we get from sports. I know for me, like most of my time with my friends is spent on a bicycle, right? And I'm like aware of this because I want to have some resilience that like if I injure myself and I can't go biking, I'm going to lose my whole social structure, right? So if I can go to the gym and do like a CrossFit class, or if I have running friends and I'm able to run, or the pool would be a great thing for that too, right? I'm even like now trying to get back into piano where it's like I have these other things where it doesn't necessarily have to be only sport or like what we consider movements. But these things are opening up communities that are making us more resilient, both in terms of our ability to keep moving, but also when we get into these things like psychological wellness or these things as well. And then I'm forgetting a C. Am I forgetting a C?
Confidence, consistency.
Confidence. And of course, confidence then spirals out of that. And we do think that confidence is like one of these things that like you could probably call it another thing, but it doesn't start with a C. But we're thinking about like we can build confidence. And I see that with some of the athletes I work with, like they've gotten into cycling. They're okay cyclists, but they haven't found like what Molly now, you can see like a whole other level of confidence. When she's out there, we still have to remind her that she has to go to the front of the race, like and stand on the front line.
I'm totally fine once you get to like a minute before the race. It's really like
Well, everyone's always dressed in their fancy run gear and like they're talking about their 200-mile races. And then I'm like, Molly, you need to go to the front because you're going to be at the front with, and so getting your confidence, like so some of the athletes I work with, they'll go to the gym and I have a couple of people that they've found like, oh, I went to this like martial arts class and like I'm like good at this. I'm a okay cyclist. That's still a thing I enjoy, but I just realized that like this is a place where I get a huge amount of confidence from doing this sport. So again, sort of that's what we've seen is like these 4 C's just always like cycle together. And sometimes when I see someone struggling, I sort of look like which of these C's is like, can we manipulate? And it's usually something around like diversifying our sports. Is like a way to edge into that, right? To get different communities in our lives.
To be fair, that was my first 100-miler, and it was like in the bathroom, like 20 minutes before the start, there were just all these women with like all of this, just huge amounts of gear, just like the poles, the like full pack, just everything. And they're all talking about like the 200-milers they're going to do after this. And this is just like casual for them. And I was like, oh God, oh no, what am I doing? And it's, 0 degrees. It's so cold out. It's like still dark. It was February. Why I decided that a 100-miler in February was a good idea. There's no daylight. So yeah, I was terrified. I was like shaking. I was like about to start crying. I was just like, I'm going to suck.
And then, but then she won. She set the course record like for everyone, like men and women. It was just like,
that race.
Yes. But she was going to start like 100th in the start pen.
Oh my
and I was
God.
like, you need to go to the front of the race.
So
yes.
cool.
So we all need the nudge. But yeah, that's the idea with the 4 C's.
You're my nudge.
Great. So I guess you're also coaching a lot of, like you mentioned, kind of, I call them like corporate athletes. So people that have very high pressure jobs, they have to work a lot, travel a lot, but they also wanna train, etc. Could you share a bit of examples of some people you coach, how you manage that in real life, like somebody that has to travel every week, because that can be very difficult, right, to get in the training. How do you approach coaching such a person?
I'm obsessed with the idea of corporate athlete. We're stealing that. That's way cooler than master's athlete.
Yeah, it's interesting. So I like often, so there's a lot of busy people. Like we struggle, like, should we call it busy? But we've sort of just settled and stopped trying to think of synonyms for busy and just sort of like embrace
I
that.
like
But
corporate. This is
You
great.
can have it. You can have it.
well, so why I don't like corporate is true. Like there's definitely, I'll talk about those people. And I have a funny story from yesterday, actually, which I'll tell. But there's also like busy because they're parents. They're busy because they're have startups and like, family stuff. Like there's all these like reasons that someone might be not have like unlimited time to train, right? And I really like that. Like I work with a couple of elite level people, like a couple of what you might call development athletes. I always brag that Noah Ramsey won Zwift Academy. You both are familiar with Zwift. He won the 2025 Zwift Academy and now races for Alpecin. He actually just broke his arm, which is very sad. So I coached Noah when he won Zwift Academy. So I always that's like the feather in my cap of the pro that you always have to brag on the pros. But Noah is like an exception. He was like a different young man that like I met and like we really like got along and stuff. So usually like the elites or the like development athletes I work with are like busier people. Like they're like a certain type of athlete. But I don't take on a lot of those athletes because I find it like overwhelming because the stakes are so high. And it's all they have to work with. Whereas what do we call them? Corporate athletes that I work with. These people, it's like they're 1 hour where like for them, like the one thing where it's not everyone asking, they're like book this hour into their day. And so it's like a really interesting challenge, whatever they're trying to do. They're trying to do Unbound. They're trying to get ready for a European cycling trip is a common goal for a lot of these people I work with. Cyclocross is very common with a bunch of the athletes we work with. It fits really well because it is shorter and like you can do it in the evenings and that sort of thing.
But a lot of them also Leadville is the biggest one, I would say, with a lot of these people, which is...
Do you think the corporate people... I'm trying to think of like the people who are CEOs that I coach.
I can name several who have like high-level jobs that are trying to do Leadville.
Yeah, I mean that and Unbound. Like those are just bucket list races, right? Like they're always going to be part of that equation for sure.
But they have a huge training load attached.
Yeah.
So how do you do it?
So, I mean, I think so. This is where, again, I think our cross training idea is part of it. Like the one person I coach is like the Canadian president of a big company, and the travel is every week, like in a hotel gym every week. And so this person's a cyclist, but I just started working with them just in the fall. And that's been the big addition is like giving up that like everything has to be a cycling workout and yes, we have to go to the gym and you might see people in the hotel gym, but like we have like a hotel room sort of like cardio strength training conditioning workout that we have. We have uphill treadmill workouts. They don't run, but we do uphill treadmill workouts. We're open to like whatever cardio machines, and then they have their strength routine as well. And then if there is a bike that they can get on while they're traveling, fantastic. But it's sort of about like keeping the consistency so that when they come back for the weekend, they're usually back Friday, Saturday, Sunday at least, that they can do some bike workouts and not feel like this is the first time they've been on moved for many weeks. So that consistency is really important for those people. So yeah, I'll stop there just in case there is follow-ups as far as these corporate athletes.
Just one follow-up on that, because when you travel a lot, and I have this challenge towards the triathletes, often the bikes are quite shit in the gym.
Yes,
like you see
always.
The bike and it's more like a bike for recovery than really cycling. So how do you handle that?
Yeah, so a lot of times that's where like I'm the same. Like I would rather do like a treadmill workout. I run as well, but like even just uphill, we call them like tread hikes, where you like put it on 15% treadmill grade. And for cyclists, that can be like better tolerated for sure. Like perhaps the movement's more similar, but you can just like trudge uphill, virtually uphill on the treadmill. So a lot of people will do that if that's accessible. On the exercise bike, sometimes we just like embrace it and just keep it really short. We do that. And then the cardio machine circuit is often one that we do, like 5 minutes on each of the brutal machines, and just like you'll get your 20, 30 minutes
like the
in.
stepping ones or whatever.
Yeah, whatever. All of them. You got to use them all, right? And as a kin student, like a kinesiology student, you have kinesiology over there. You guys get that. So it's like a lot of people go into gym teaching, but some will go into like physiotherapy. But it's just like, I always joke, I have a university degree in gym. But as part of that, right, like we would do, like I've done every aerobics class, I've done every sport. And so like I have this like university degree in gym. But when you go to these places, it's like, wow, what is this stupid machine? And then you get on there and you like move for 30 minutes or whatever you can tolerate, 5 minutes here, 5 minutes there. And like you go around the circuit.
So when we were in China, they do this thing every day. So we were on like a tour just in this random city. And I guess at certain times of day, they everyone does physical activity. There's like, I don't know if there's like a chime that sounds or something, but everyone starts doing these like movements like in the street. It was kind of bizarre,
Really?
very cool to watch. But like all of us are like just kind of watching it, except for Peter, who's like doing the like dance moves along with them. And frankly, I thought he was just like being a jerk and making fun of them. It wasn't until like a week later that he explained that he was just really stoked on it. He just thought it was so cool. And he was like so into the concept.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe in hindsight, it wasn't a good idea. I don't know. I don't think anyone was offended. But yeah, like, I mean, it's just like, that's sort of how I'm wired up. But to your question, yeah, like not everyone, like you have to find the thing that everyone's willing to do. And again, sometimes that's where that's like, is it grit or fit? So like some people would tough it out and just like grind out on that bike and make it work. And then sometimes it is like, in the long term is like Molly's solution where she's like, well, I can just run anywhere pretty much. So I'm just going to be a runner. And like, I'm more okay with that too, right? So that could be an option too, where this person, if they continue to travel, maybe they will decide that they want to become a runner or something that's like more accessible like that too. But for a lot of these people, it is like, there's no strength training. So that's like another thing where we can start like having strength training come into the week. And then the long term, like yesterday I was on the phone, this is the funny story I'll tell you, but I was on the phone with them and we sort of plan out the next bunch of weeks because I can see where the travel is. So what we'll also do is like when they're home, because they're not traveling every single week, and sometimes they are just away for like a day or two or like locally traveling. So some weeks we can do blocks of like heavy bike work. Every day we're on the trainer, very specific, like very, to the goal, to the like wattage and what you dream of doing as a cyclist, or what you hope to do or you expect to do. So we plan this out in advance where there isn't balance. This is the same. What's the saying? Like there is balance doesn't come in like the days. It might come in like the months. And so for busy people, that's the thing is like you got to hustle sometimes. And then sometimes you need to back off and go to maintenance mode. Right. And that's, I think, how life often works when you're a busy person is it's not like every day you get like your hour for meditation and then your hour for, this, and then you sleep a perfect 8 or 9 hours. Like, I think the reality is that most busy people have like, I barely slept. I really hustled overnight. You've been programming. I know you just started with your programmers on Augo there. And it's just like, you're probably hustling, right? But that won't go on forever. So I think that idea of like thinking about like blocks of training and when you can fit that in works really well with that corporate client.
Yeah, it's quite interesting. So what I hear from you is like, instead of being so obsessed with trying to get that really specific workout or sport, think bigger, think wider. What is it that you can do that will bring you consistency, that will bring you joy, and that will matter much more in the long term?
I think so, yeah, and we'll be more successful, right? Like just the reality of the situations that you can't possibly load up. We always say like the Joe Friel like training Bible, like a lot of people when they do their like training, it's like 3 on, 1 off, like there's 2 intensity workouts, there's the long ride on Sunday, and it's like, well, if you're traveling, like you're going to have to just like figure out a different rhythm to that. Not that those little elements aren't all important, but they might come in different doses or different like frequencies or rhythms.
Makes sense. And you alluded to the importance of strength training. I would love to go there. I know you guys are super big fans, or for lack of a better word.
Literally why we moved. We wanted to get a garage so we could have a squat rack.
Yes.
100%.
Nice. We also have a home gym. There's like 2 bedrooms in the house, and the second one is just a gym and both
Awesome.
bikes. So another thing in common. Tell us about it. Why do you think it's so important for endurance athletes?
Yeah, and again, like we mostly work with people who are age group masters, adult athletes. I always like, what do you prefer to be called? You almost need to ask people now, because like I said that to an athlete the other day, and they're like, I'm not a master, and I was like, I mean, you're not pro. And I was like so confused.
You're not U23. You're not pro. I don't know.
Like, what would you like to be?
You're not pro.
Yeah, you almost need to ask, like, what would you like to be called? But it's like, yeah, I'm like, you're 36 or 30. I think they were turning 35. And I'm like, okay, like you're maybe a baby master.
You're a baby master.
But I get it. So strength training, very important. I mean, the science, I think, is pretty clear that for like most things, it's beneficial. For health, it's beneficial. Most of like any of your like health recommendations from your governments or things like that are going to recommend like strength training twice a week. I often start with those sort of like what, as athletes, we might disregard like what that baseline like physical activity, that 150 minutes a week, that 2 strength training sessions. We often discount those, and then you look at it and you're like, are you meeting the minimum health recommendations, right? Like a lot of these things suggest that you should be moving throughout the day and minimizing the amount of time you're like doing nothing in the day. But then as athletes, we often do 1 hour of exercise and then 23 hours of not moving around, like never walking, never doing, little even movement snacks or these type of things. Yeah, you're saving your legs for your one magical hour, right?
We always say pro cyclists are kind of the laziest people on the planet when you actually like look at their day.
Yeah.
So much time on the couch.
So, I mean, there's all those reasons that it's healthful. We know, like, it's hard to find a study that it doesn't improve performance. But then also as people who are getting older, who are humans, like, I think it's a great thing to do. And then I think it also feeds into our consistency, and then also into, like, a lot of people do find in their gym community is a really great part of their life when they get into it. If it's accessible, not everyone can go to a local gym or has that access to gym, but it is something that we do find a number of our athletes actually do find, like, this has improved my life, not because of the strength training or the massive loads or the muscles I have, but because of the actual, you could tell, like, sociological benefits of it too. Yeah. So yeah, I think that's like the main.
Well, I think the other thing is like injury risk and ability to bounce back. Like the more muscle you have, the less chance you have of sustaining like pretty serious injuries, and the better chance you have of coming back quicker, for sure. And even like it sneaks mobility in, right? Like you always say, like there's so many of your cyclists that can't like put their arms up over their heads, really.
Yeah.
So when you're overhead pressing, yeah, I know, right?
Correct.
Wait, can I do that?
Yeah. So a lot of people, we do a screen when people come in on like their basic movement abilities, and one of them is like, can you do 5 pull-ups? And not everyone is going to get there for a variety of reasons, but what we're actually screening for is like, do you have anything that you can hang on in your house, and like, can you put and I have people that I coach in their 70s where it's, they've had 2 shoulder operations and it's just not going to physically happen. So we need to modify that and observe that. But then that's also discussed, which is important to also discuss that. But a lot of people can improve their ability to hang, if not also start adding some pull-ups and things into it. So we'll have people get doorway pull-up bars or put in get rid of their second bedroom like you all have.
It's a good user space. And for me, I am a super pro in strength training for sure. But I do struggle, and I also see that in my athletes that it's hard to fit in with training sometimes. Like you're already fatigued from the runs,
and then you get really sore. Training. Yeah,
you get sore. Like, what is what's your advice? How do you think about the optimal day to do strength training in relation to your run workout, for example?
It's a great,
and also duration. I'm curious what you think about duration.
Yeah, so I mean, we when we talk about strength, like we could also call it just like off bike movement or movement, if you're not a cyclist, I guess, but just keeping your mobility. And so that we're open to everything. Like Molly loves yoga. She just put out a yoga video.
You make that sound like it's like I did like a janky like yoga DVD.
No, so we have some that we put like on our YouTube channel or whatever, but you can see on Consummate Athlete. So periodically it is. But Molly loves yoga. So every morning she does yoga, but it includes, we always say like yoga can start becoming a lot like a calisthenic or like a strength workout if you start doing, how many push-ups do you do? 50 push-ups every morning in her yoga. I don't even notice. I'm playing with the dog and getting breakfast going, and Molly somehow fits some planks and some push-ups, and she's up and down off the ground, which sounds a lot like squatting. There's lunges in there. So there's things that a lot of people would consider strength training. Like many of our cyclists will go along with Molly's yoga and get like, they're like, I could barely move the next day.
To be fair, I've been doing this every day for 10 years. So it's just like slow. Wow. It was like a 3-minute yoga routine that I started doing like for an article. Actually, I like got paid to write. Paid to write an article that was like, I did yoga every day for a month. And I was like, well, shit, how am I going to make sure I do yoga? Okay, so I'll do it in the morning. I'll just do it 3 minutes. So I was doing that, and then I just kept doing it. So pretty much like I miss, like a couple days a month maybe, but like.
Wow.
Every day, and it's just grown where like I cracked my ankle at Leadville, so now I have like ankle stuff that like ankle mobility stuff that got like worked in, or like my knee was bugging me, so now I do like a bridge thing that goes in. So it's just kind of like slowly grown out over time. So it's like a 13-minute routine, I think, at this point. That every morning, which like is doable in the morning, and then you add up to you're doing like 90 minutes of strength training and mobility without even thinking about it every week, which is 75 hours a year worth.
That's right. Yeah. And so definitely it's like however it fits in. So a lot of people will start in their strength thing, their strength routine, they're starting, and like anything you do to start is going to be hugely beneficial. I call this like the inverted U. If you picture like a rainbow, a lot of things can be described on this like inverted U, where at first it's very steep and you get a lot of benefit. So if you know someone who isn't doing any exercise and they started doing 30 minutes of exercise once a week, they would get so much benefit whatever the benefit is, right? Their fitness, their ability to walk, their ability, like their mortality, whatever you want to say benefit is going to improve hugely with like every little unit. But then at some point that rainbow comes towards the top and it sort of levels off. And we know we've probably all got there in our athletic career where it's like, if I train another 10 hours, right? Like for me to get better at mountain biking, and if I could just quit everything and like go into full monk mode,
Absolutely not.
Train, instead of training 10 hours maybe a week, maybe I train 20 hours and I'm recovering, maybe I would get a couple percent, right? Like it's just not a linear relationship. And then at some point there, I don't even know if I could train 10 more hours, because at some point there's going to be a reduction. It's actually going to be worse. I'm going to get injured. I'm going to get sick. I'm going to get slow. I'm going to get worse results, even though I train more and more and more. So I try and always like think about that inverted U, like where are we on that curve, if you will, where like, are we getting lots of benefit, or are the benefits starting to like tail off? Or are we actually training too much, right? Molly, when she did her first Ironman, probably trained way too much. She was doing 100-milers like every week. Whereas the second time we did, I think we did a very a Matt Fitzgerald. We both just did it because I love like trying different things. So we both used a Matt Fitzgerald minimal. What was it called? Like
I think it was just the minimal Ironman training.
And so it was like very minimal. I don't recall the exact thing, but like
how many hours was it? I'm curious.
Oh, short. Like probably 10, like at most, right? Like
yeah.
And so it was like I think if you weren't very fast, it would be a tough one. But because like we're both like relatively,
it did have caveats on it. Like it was like, don't do this plan if you like can't do like these speeds, or you haven't done this distance before. Right. So it was like very much for people who already had a base level of fitness and were like reasonably quick.
Not coming from the couch.
Exactly.
Right.
It's not couch to Ironman.
Yeah, because I think if you were like very slow at all the sports, you like wouldn't get quite enough experience or stimulus to do it. But in any case, it worked pretty well. Shout out to Matt. But that also identifies with a lot of our training philosophy as well, where it's like I always say, like, if a 90-minute ride is good, is a 3-hour ride better, is a 4-hour ride better, and then at some point for most people, and your point will be different than my point, it's going to tail off. So tying this back to strength, if we start doing 10 minutes a few times a week of core or body weight things, or maybe you have some dumbbells and you add in a little bit of rowing or pulling, or you have a pull-up bar and you add some pull-ups into like a yoga routine or movement routine like Molly's talking about, it's going to be fantastic. And then in a month or two, you can add to that, however you add to that. You can make it heavier, you can make it more sets and reps. You can make it more complicated. You can learn new routines, new exercises, and then that's going to be fantastic. So what I usually see is that people will start with like 3 sets of 10 or whatever their thing is, and it's just like a lot, like a big dose. And strength is a lot like running, where the dose can like really, we've all felt that, where you're very sore for like a week afterwards. And so we want to scale it back so that we can be consistent over time and gradually increase. So we'll usually start people with something like that 10-minute, or I really love 1 set of 8, and we do 1 set of 8 exercises 8 times, a couple times a week. And so that takes 10, 20, maybe 30 minutes, depending on how precious with your warm-ups and cool-downs you are. And
not precious at all. Very precious.
And then in a month or two, we go to 2 sets of 8. And then in a month or two, we go to 3 sets of 8. And then you can go wherever you want with strength from there. You can get heavier and less reps and that sort of thing. So I think that's a great way to look at like scaling in, is like just keeping it like minimum to start, and then like, okay, it's good and I'm not improving. Okay, like add a little bit or change it up from there. And so maybe in like a month or two. So
yeah. And like we're jazzed about our squat rack, don't get me wrong, but we also went for 10 years with just having an adjustable dumbbell in the house and doing whatever we could with that. So I think a lot of people overthink how much they need to actually just get started strength training.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I guess also maybe obsess over the weight they put on the barbell.
Well, especially now, I don't know if you have the like lift heavy. Can we swear on this podcast? I don't know, like the SHIT lift heavy stuff.
Yes.
I think that confuses people sometimes, because you'll see the person with like the big like trap bar, like the hex bar, like doing their deadlift and this type of thing, which is true. Like a lot of the studies are on like heavier strength training, but when you are not very strong, like it doesn't have to be very heavy, and you do have to get started and then continue past the study duration, right? A lot of studies are going to be 4 weeks or 6 weeks.
Yeah.
Often there's a lot of people dropping out of the studies when they're aggressive. So we do want to think about what can we do for a long time so that we can continue to do it, right? And we're going to see benefit. And I love this. Dan Cleather is a really smart guy from the UK, and we've had him on our podcast a few times. He has a great book I always recommend called The Little Black Book of Training Wisdom. Really short, but really, really great for any sort of coach or athlete. Really like one of the top books I recommend for people who want to learn about training theory. And he has so many great concepts, but I had two that I wanted to talk about. So the one with strength training was that, like, for someone like myself, like I've trained so much. I've done, so again, if I train more on my mountain bike, how much better will I get? But then if I added strength training in, how much more benefit am I going to get just for like 2 units of strength training, where whatever, my movement ability improves. As Molly said, I get a little more injury resilient. I maybe get a couple more mountain bike sessions in the year.
Buffer,
Yeah, exactly. So there's all of that, right? And then I had another. What was going on about?
No idea what your other thought was.
Okay.
Cannot read your mind yet.
Yes. Well, likely it was around sort of this idea of adaptive capacity, and so Dan talks a lot about that. Yeah. Where we just want to be careful that, like, we don't go too much too soon, right? Like, that's really what adaptive capacity is saying, is that, like, we have this much ability to adapt. You know, I'm making this like gap between my hands. And if we just all of a sudden go 5 sets of 5 max deadlifts, like, it's gone. It's like a fire hose. You've blasted the person with like every stimulus possible, right? This is like when young athletes and their parents will come and they'll be like, we're altitude training. We're going to, we're going high carb. We're doing all this. He's got the recovery boots. He's got, what's the baking soda he's eating? And you're like, he's 8. What are we going to do in 10 years, right? You need to leave some adaptive capacity so that we can keep doing something. So with strength training, it's the similar. Don't start with the max. Start with 1 set of 8. Very consistent. Make sure you're not getting injured and too sore. And then over time, we can get more, we can adapt further, right? We can leave some room to grow.
Yeah.
Cool.
What do you think about strength specific work on the bike, like low gear work? Do you think that somehow can replace a gym session, or you think it's still important to have, be doing your squats, etc.?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's like one of those, like, probably you could do both. And I'm still hesitant with this like low intensity, low RPM work. Like historically, that's been something over in the West, I guess, was like looked down upon. Like you were like you're on like a beach cruiser ride. But then I do see that it's like really popular. So I'm open to the idea. I just haven't had a lot of like reason that we would do that. But I do like low RPM, high intensity work. So something that you might call like force or muscle tension, or these types of things where you're working very, very hard, but your cadence is down at like 60 RPM. And I would say that has a place for sure and is very potent. So I think you're right. Like, I think if someone didn't have access to strength for some reason, which I would always question, like, why you don't have access to, like, you can't do push-ups and lunges or something, but probably it's good, right? And this is like the idea of like variety. Like, I think we also want to be open that, like, it's good to have variety in your training and see the whole range of cadences and intensities. So I think that all is good, but I don't know. I think I would like prefer to see something again where we're getting some mobility into our routine by doing even body weight squats and lunges and getting up and down off of the ground and push-ups and these types of things.
I was gonna say, even just the core, adding in core and upper body, if that's how you're going to do most of the leg strength, is definitely, because cyclists tend to neglect everything like waist up.
And the last few years we've included, because there is this problem with cyclists, especially like they travel a lot, whether they're busy or a corporate athlete or whether they're elite athletes or development athletes. Like our development athletes, I work with a few here just locally, and they're always at different things like camps and things, right? And it's like, well, they just aren't going to have access to a gym a lot of the time. So then it's like, well, what do you do? What is the consistent thing we can do? And so jumps are something that I've been very like curious, and I think I've had good benefit because, again, you can sort of jump anywhere as long as you've, like, again, eased into it. Jumps are very potent. You need to be very careful easing into it. But the research is actually great on for building bones and power and just athleticism, right? So that's something that we've used to try and get around this like equipment and location as well. But that sort of diverts a little bit from your cadence question, but there you go.
No, that's a good answer. Now that we're talking specifics of cycling, I also want to touch upon the famous erg mode.
Molly may have to leave the room.
My love topic, I can tell.
I love
I knew Favi. I was like, oh no, Favi won't like this probably, but we'll see. We'll see.
So tell us, what are your thoughts? And maybe we can explain to the listeners that are not avid cyclists what erg mode is. So somebody.
It's a good call. Yeah. Sometimes we talk about it on the podcast and I'm like, oh, I think maybe we should have explained what erg mode was and why it even matters. So there's like, it's interesting. I love these things in cycling where like some people I coach wouldn't even know what we're talking about. We would have to explain that erg mode is this setting on a lot of smart trainers where it sets the wattage at a certain wattage, so say 150 watts, and then you ride and it controls the wattage and keeps it no matter what you do with your effort or your cadence specifically. If you drop your cadence, it'll sort of increase the resistance to keep you at that same workload or power. So that's essentially what erg mode is. Yeah.
Great explanation.
I think
About
I was gonna say now you get to do your.
I just wanted to leave a gap there. Okay,
Yeah.
so
Pop on your soapbox.
my feeling is that it's a great tool and there's applications for it for sure. I have some athletes that use it really, really well, and some athletes that like fail a lot of workouts because of it, right? And so the danger of erg mode, if the athlete's not a thinking athlete, is that a lot of the softwares we use are going to pick like an average of a zone or an average of the range the coach might have given you or the program might have given you. So if the coach said ride in zone 4 and your zone 4 threshold zone is 150 to 200 watts or something like that, right? Whatever your threshold is, it's going to pick 175. So then we're assuming that on that day, the calibration of your trainer and of course your body's state, recovery state, your mental state, the heat in the room, that 175 is the perfect wattage that you should ride at for your entire 2 or 3 hour ride. Now, a thinking athlete might use the plus minus in their software so that you can adjust the wattage that it's setting, which is great. And I think that's a great way to use erg if you are open to adjusting the load within the workout, between workouts, within the interval. But that would be the danger, is that we've like let a computer pick the average of a zone as the wattage we should spend all our training time at. And so that just makes me nervous as a coach that I've been assigned to like pick this sort of out of a range. Does that make sense? I'll stop there and I can go on, but does that make sense?
You can go on.
I was saying that erg mode is the mode where you don't need to think, right? Because you just need to pedal essentially. And
Yes.
then in racing, it's not gonna be the same. You need to think.
Yes. Yeah, so it's good. There's sometimes, and I say with some of my corporate athletes, so is that what we're calling them? I
like corporate athletes.
TM. I get it, right? Like they have been thinking all day. They just want to be told. So I'm like, okay, today that's okay, but you're exactly right. At some point, we need to throw you. I like to think about athletes as in like this ecological framework where we're going to throw you into the forest, whatever you want to use for your analogy, into the water, in Fabi's case. And you're going to have to, there's going to be people like attacking you in the water, literally. You're going to have to swim and like pick your pace and all this type of stuff, right? And so swimming makes sense, but you could probably have a similar mode in one of these swim treadmills where it's like just the water's moving this fast and you just, but no one's around you. And it's not really like the environment we're preparing for, and we would prefer to have you thinking, perceiving, so that then you can take action. So with a lot of these virtual simulation softwares, Zwift, Training Peaks Virtual, Ruvi is a popular one as well, we're paying for a software that is a simulation of an environment. So I try and encourage athletes to go for virtual rides, ride up the virtual mountain, and have to shift and perceive maybe drafting, these type of things. For some of their rides, it's amazing how engaged athletes will feel on their long 3-hour bike ride where they finish maybe a route or two on these softwares, or maybe just a big long route. They maybe ride them or whatever. Like I know that you can do Alpe d'Huez Zwift and Alpe d'Huez in Ruvi, I think, and there's all these courses you can do. And so they're like, wow, I'm finishing this route. There's this other thing I'm paying attention to, but I'm also having to shift and pay attention to the terrain, right? And so it's much more engaging for that virtual environment. So I think from like a burnout perspective, it's probably better getting through your workouts in a more enjoyable way. And then also I do think it will transfer outside better. And then of course there's that physiological thing, like should we have undulations in the power across the zones as we train? And I think the answer is yes. Like I think that's a good thing to have a bit of variety in that power signal or stimulus.
I'm now just thinking about what an endless pool would look like in triathlete mode, where it just has gusts of
Our pool noodles just like whipping you.
gusts of water coming from different sides, like a thing that comes out and grabs your ankle and like pulls you back.
So fun. I actually just had a conversation with an athlete that I coach yesterday, and she's doing her friend. She's doing a half Ironman with her friend, and her friend has never done a race. So I told her to swim with her in open water, and kind of try to push her, kick her so the friend can get the feeling of not being comfortable in the water.
Wow.
Because it's not a nice feeling in the beginning.
It's not. I mean, I'll say when we did Ironman. We didn't talk about Molly's second Ironman, but that's okay. She did great in it. But we did it together. We did it at the same time. We didn't like race together, but
Would have been terrible.
But I found the swim I was terrified for it because I couldn't swim, and then I learned to swim for the Ironman over a year and a bit. And I found it was the most fun. It was the most like racing and, really competitive and like drafting and a little bit of chaos. I found it was really, really great. Just like really fun.
Just an aside, I did beat him in the swim by like 20 minutes.
Wow.
I mean,
Look
he
at that.
smoked me in the bike by like 2 hours. We did have like almost the exact same run time though. So I feel like relatively even though the bike obviously made him finish a lot faster than me. It's fine.
20 minutes. That's by 20 minutes.
That's a lot. It's a lot in swimming time.
Let's say that my tip. She's a very good swimmer. Yeah. I mean, what was my time? Like an hour 10 or something.
Like an hour 20, sure.
Yeah. I mean, it's not impressive, but I mean, it was okay.
It's good.
It was good. It was good for a first swim.
Yeah. Very good.
Cool. I would love to switch gears a little bit again and ask more questions to Molly this time. So, Molly, you run Strong Girl Publishing, which is super cool. Can you tell us a little bit about the mission and why you started this?
Yeah, for sure. So, I guess it's been a few years since I started the Shred Girl series, which if you picture the Babysitter's Club books or like Nancy Drew, this is that, but bikes instead of babysitting or mysteries. So it's my sneaky way of convincing little girls like who I was when I was younger. It's kind of my sneaky way of showing them that bikes and like outdoor adventure and movement can actually be super fun because I was the least athletic kid on the planet.
Really?
Oh my God. I never once, we had the mile run in gym class like every year when I was growing up. Never once did it. Always managed to get out of it.
We did that too, the 1K run. I remember that. It felt so long.
So long. Yeah. So I was
But you didn't until you were like 20, like in university is when you started like exercising.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I never played a
really?
sport. I never did a sport. I had no interest whatsoever. I was a very punk rock bookworm. So then, kind of flipped a switch there. But my whole goal with writing the Shred Girls books was to kind of encourage little girls like myself that hey, there is a sport that can be for you. Like you can be invited into this. But also I kind of wanted to get little girls who were already really into sports into reading. So luckily it's worked both ways. But as I was doing that, I was hearing more and more from publishers that books about girls in sport just don't really sell. Like they're hard to market. There's just not that much of an audience, which I don't think is true. But I do also understand that publishing is a very difficult industry now that I'm in it. So I feel for those publishers. But at the same time, I was getting all these young women who we'd coached a lot of camps with a lot of really cool young athletes. And, we'd been at races. So more and more young women were talking to me and they were saying hey, I have an idea for a book. I know you write books, any advice? And I'd be I don't know what to tell you because self-publishing is really difficult to do it well is really, really hard. And to get a contract with a major publisher or any publisher is also really, really hard. Don't really have great advice. And the more I thought about it, the more I was trying to figure out where I wanted the Shred Girls books to go and what I wanted to do with them. And I had self-published, I'd traditionally published, I'd done all of the different ways of doing it. And then it occurred to me, the whole rising tide lifts all boats. What if I could help these young women put out their books? And then as they're putting out their books, they're also helping each other market their books. They're helping me market the Shred Girls books. So we're all helping support each other and grow each other. So started Strong Girl Publishing, and we now have, I think we're up to over 10 authors now, which is terrifying and cool and shocking. And it's great. Misha Powell, a Canadian track Olympian, we co-wrote her memoir last year. And,
Really cool.
So that came out and it's great. And then, we're doing a book with Marley Blonsky, who started All Bodies on Bikes, and her children's book comes out this spring. And when her book comes out, Misha's already talking about it. Vanessa Kuhlbeck's already, all of our authors are already talking up her book coming out. And, in the fall, she's been talking about the Shred Girls books and Misha's book. So they're all kind of helping promote each other. So we've kind of started this really cool community ecosystem of supporting the young women athletes, but then also bringing their stories and bringing their books to this whole other generation of young girls. And it's been, really cool.
That's super cool.
Yeah, this week I got a message from a parent whose daughter has been reading the Shred Girls books for like 7 years now, and she just did a book report on one of like the third book in the series, and she sent me a picture of like the book report, and she made like a diorama of one of the scenes from the book. So it's like a little like campsite with like bikes laid out. Oh my!
So
When I tell you,
cute.
I sobbed. So excited! It was so nice.
Yeah, and I think it's also, at least in my perception, that bikes is still something that might appeal more to boys, right? Somehow.
Absolutely,
And
yeah.
as a girl, you might think, hey, boys ride bikes, and if you don't have a role model or you don't have books where you read about it. So I think it's really nice. I mean, even when you go to group rides, right, it's mostly older men with very expensive bikes, and then you come with your bike and then they don't even want to let you in the group because they think you're slower anyway, and then you pass them.
And then they're mad about that. Yeah, it's really a no-win. Exactly. And so many girls and so many young women and girls get into bikes because of whether it's a dad or a boyfriend, or they go out on their own. But you're right, they go to a club that only has guys or has like maybe a couple women, and then no one gives them advice either. So they don't talk about like, here's what a chamois is, and you don't wear your underwear with it, and like none of that information gets put out. So it's such a big like passion of mine to just like shout that from the rooftops and try to make sure that girls know that they are invited to bike, and also here's some tips for when they are biking.
I'm just laughing when you said the thing about no underwear, because we had to learn it the hard way when we started cycling. We're like, oh, you don't wear underwear. It's so lame.
Yes. I'm sure I still don't know many things.
Yeah, it's very common, but yeah, that's
No one tells you.
Yeah.
I literally shouted that yesterday at the bike park when I was doing the panel. That was like how I ended the panel for everyone. I was like, and don't wear underwear with your bike shorts, and like through the mic.
Yeah, I think it's also because bike has something mechanical with it, like
Handy.
working on the bike, etc. So I also try to do that by myself to learn, a bit the skill of how to, do your bike, set it up, pack it up, etc. Not be dependent on.
You're very good at it. I'm not.
Like, as long as one of you is, you're totally fine.
Yeah, and it is tough. I think I've seen like there's a change. I think like you're seeing girls play on bikes a bit more, but you're right. It's not like common, and like they're like often timid to do it, right? So it is like sometimes seeing like a book like this might help, or hopefully seeing other girls or women playing as well is helpful. But things like the building the bikes are things where it's very, men will start building the bikes, and it's like, no, just like you can help. But like when we go on this camp on Sunday and Monday here in Spain, like, well, there'll be a big group of them, and like, they have to learn how to like to use the Allen key, and but it's like you got to let people struggle, and
Yeah. Peter, a question for you. From a coaching perspective, do you see a difference coaching men, coaching women in terms of what they need, how they behave, anything related to confidence? Does anything come to mind when thinking about gender differences?
Yeah. I mean, people are so different. Like I have one of our corporate women, and it's funny. I was seeing them all yesterday. Like I coach about, and like I think it's probably a split of the like CEOs who are women. But yeah, often you like think, oh, like the male CEO or something, right? But it's interesting. Like one of them, they go on bike packing trips on their own, which terrifies me, and like camps on like the side of the road, and she just like owns it as like she's in her 60s now, and. Yeah, just
really
she's
cool.
like, I just don't want to talk to people for a week because she's like so involved in this like nonprofit. So it's like, but then that's like to me very like I would never go and do that, and she's like much better in the wilderness and like with night. I hate nighttime and darkness. So I don't know. Like I think it's probably more individual. Like I have another CEO I'm thinking of, and he's very like emotional and like feelings and things that you might think more. So I don't know. Like. It's hard to say. Do you think?
No, I think a lot of yours is very like person to person, and you know them all so well too. So I think it's also you don't quite like it's harder for you to like bucket them. I mean, I would say I think confidence across the board is probably one of the bigger things, because I will say, having known a lot of Peter's clients, I would say the women definitely underestimate what they're capable of. Whereas like every guy that like buys a Leadville plan or comes to you for like Leadville coaching is convinced that they can go like under 10 hours, like no problem.
And like Leadville, like and Unbound are like this too, these big like bucket list races. Like the women that enter, like the finish rate is really high. I don't want to say a percentage, but let's say it's 95%. And then the men who enter, there's more men, but like the baseline confidence is more saying like the finish rate is much lower. And this is like in most races, that's what you'll see is men are like overconfident about their ability to finish. Molly did this her first 100 miler. She didn't want to start at the front, but then beat everyone by like hours, set the course record, but wasn't confident that she would be like, probably weren't even confident on finishing, but like wasn't confident she would be fast at the 100 miler. Meanwhile, a 20-year-old guy came to the race with like a Janssen, I don't know if Janssen backpack, but like a kid's backpack, and like started running with Molly for the first lap. And Molly asked him at one point, like, what's like, I don't know, the longest race have you done, 100 mile or whatever? And he was like, oh no, I've done like a 10-mile run. And so he didn't finish, needless to say. But I think that's like, you might see that as like a baseline, like whatever. Is that societal? Like that, like you can do anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The other guy that was with us for that first lap was also just like, do you always talk this much in races to me? And I was like, yes, I do. Sorry.
So I think there's that. And then maybe there's just like, again, society. I don't think it's like the person. I think it's like societal. So like if you haven't been allowed to build your own bicycle, you're not going to be able to build your own bicycle. So like giving that space. And so I do a little bit of that, like whether I'm talking to someone in person or on the phone, is like talking through like how to get this pedal off the bike, like the damn thing, like which direction did the pedal go? Like sometimes you just haven't been able to do that until this point where you have to do this on your own because you're suddenly away in Spain, on your own or something, right? So I would say those are differences, but it's so individual, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess you cannot say, a woman is necessarily more like that or that, right? Then you're against genderizing the person to their...
It's hard. Yeah. Hopefully we're seeing change, right? Like I can think of like our friend Jen Jackson's one of the like top mountain bike racers in the world now. She races for Orbea. Cool. She's Canadian, but like she was been a bike mechanic. Like she's much better at bike mechanics than I would be, right? True. And she was a cross country skier, very high level before that. So like she just has such like world experience and like sport training experience. So it's like what you've done in your life, right? It can be so variable.
I do think, and I will say like the other maybe difference with men and women is the women do seem like they're more comfortable, like, and maybe it's just because it's more popular right now to talk about like perimenopause and menopause and stuff. But I noticed the women are much more willing to like chat with you about that stuff and like let you know what's going on at that. Whereas the men, like,
we always joke.
To a man, this has never not happened. We'll like email him and be like, so I can't, like, just a minor procedure I had done, can't ride for like 2 weeks. They just will not just, like, say
2 weeks. Like all of a sudden it's like, yeah. And I'm like, sorry, 2 weeks? And I'm like, are you getting a vasectomy? And then every time it's that they're getting a vasectomy and they can't say that for some reason. Meanwhile, the women I work with, because we've, especially ones I've worked with for a long time, like whatever, like think of something that's much more serious or much more, I guess, embarrassing, but personal. No problem saying it, right? And so that would be like definitely like a commonality is that men cannot speak about like.
Oh, funny.
So we're getting to the close of this amazing podcast episode, and we always end the episodes with advice for our listeners. And our listeners are, well, through the board, beginner athletes, but also more advanced ones. We start with you, Peter. We always ask for advice for our listeners. And if there's one piece of advice you'd give to coaches or athletes who want to improve their approach to training, what would that be?
Oh, so much. What do you think I should go with? I don't know.
I think I have to answer this. Like, I'm not giving you my answer.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think like one of the big things that like I guess I'm known for, what people come for, is like that cross training element, right? And certainly like there's the risk of getting injured when you try new things, but I think for all athletes, but especially for adult athletes, if you've been doing the same discipline, the same sport, like we want to try other things and sample other things. So definitely it's okay to go and take a lesson or edge into gravel if you've always been in road or different things like that, right? Like it rarely do people like feel bad about like learning these new things. I have one athlete whose name is also Peter, and he's a super funny guy, and he sort of like got into jump roping because this Buddy Lee guy is from the same place as him, Virginia in the US. And so I was like, oh, I'll do this with you. So we've been getting into jump roping, which is like super comical. Again, I'm a kin student, so I've done all the the aerobics and this type of stuff. So essentially we're doing aerobics together virtually. But again, he's jumping, and now he's working. For him, the like footwork is really, really challenging, right? Like the kinesthetic awareness to move, and so we just don't know where that will feed back to cycling. Yes, but then also now he's getting this bone stimulation and this jumping built into his day, and just like something else he can do as a little movement snack, right? So it can be goofy, it can be specific, it can be an event, but I think just like be open to cross training as part of your life, if not your training for sport.
Good advice. I was thinking already before, I was like thinking, oh, I need to do my strength training this week because I haven't done it.
Okay, should we do push-ups together or what?
I actually have a follow-up for you, Peter. You mentioned, somebody that has always been doing road, and if they want to do gravel, what would be also your one piece of advice for somebody that might want to try out gravel?
Yeah, so often so we don't really advertise for road. I do coach people who do road. A lot of times they do also do other disciplines, but sometimes they come and they're like road people, which is great. And I always warn them though, like I'm going to turn you into like an off-road cyclist, if not a mountain biker by the end of this. So how do you do it? So the 1%, like I think if you can get any sort of skill instruction or go to like a camp or a clinic, that's going to be useful. Like I do think that's like a good investment. People, it makes sense in swimming.
Technique.
Yeah, and just like, as you say, like the underwear story is like an example of like, sometimes there's like big things people can tell you that are just going to make it better. It's not even necessarily a skill, but like, just don't ever do that. Right? Like you can solve a problem a lot of ways, but sometimes there's like some big, like, don't do that. Right. So it might be like you've been trying to do gravel, but your tires are pumped up to like 100 PSI. And it's like, well, just don't do that. Like put them at 40. So the things like that'll help. Right. But I think just like edging into like gravel is such a neat discipline because what I think of as gravel could be completely different than what you two think of as gravel just because of where you live or the gravel that's accessible. So starting with what we would call rail trail or crushed gravel that's just flat and straight. For a lot of road people, we have 100K plus of almost straight rail trail here where we live, which is fantastic. It's a great resource. But a lot of the road people won't go on it just because it's got a little bit of crushed gravel. And you could ride it comfortably on 23C road tires. So go and venture onto like that, I think, to start. And just like it'll open up routes and safety and all this time in nature and stuff. But that would be like the two things is like if you can get any skill instruction to get rid of like the like obvious things that'll make your experience better. And then just edge in, sort of like strength training, edge into what gravel is and open up some routes or safety. Yeah.
I've had experiences where I was going on the wrong road with my TT bike and I was ending up on gravel. I was like,
oh, no.
That doesn't sound good.
Funny story about TT bikes on gravel. The day, like this is back when we were training for Ironman, we had just bought a new condo and we were moving in that day. And my parents were also coming up to visit for the first time ever in Canada. And he says, oh no, I have to go out and do my training ride on his TT bike.
Triathlon bike,
yeah. Which he then took on gravel. So I get home with my parents, who again have not been to Canada yet. They open the door and all I see is just like, first there's like a bloody glove and then there's like a bloody arm warmer and there's just this trail leading into the bedroom because someone decided it was a good idea to do a gravel descent on his TT bike and horribly concussed himself.
So at the time, I thought it was like a good social media thing to do like gravel triathlon. But in hindsight, it wasn't. It was funny while it lasted, and then it wasn't as funny. Yes.
Yeah, that's a good one.
So maybe that's a tip. Get like a bike that doesn't have aero bars on it, I guess. Yeah.
That makes sense. Cool. And now when I ask you, Molly, so what advice would you give somebody that wants to get into 100-mile racing and has a really busy life like yourself?
Yeah, that's a great question. First, I'm like, are you sure?
She's back.
It's a very long distance, as it turns out. So maybe first I would say, like, have you done a 50K, a 50-miler, a 100K? Did you enjoy them and want to go longer? Because I think a lot of people sign up for the 100-miler thinking that they have to do it because a friend did it, someone they know did it. They read Born to Run by Chris McDougall, and
It's almost like the marathon, right? Where like it used to be people would like when you run, you have to do a marathon, and now it's like you almost have to like you run, you do 100 miles, right? And it's like we could question that, right?
Yeah. So first, question your reasons. But that okay, you're doing it, totally fine. Consistency above all other things. Like I would say like I train pretty like minimal 400 milers. Like I don't do most weeks I do under 100K like total, which
and that's like 6 years into like Molly is the most consistent person in the world.
So I was gonna say consistency, yeah.
But like that's like after like six, all her previous triathlon experience, but then like training for Ironman, that's what you've built up to.
Yeah, exactly. This is 20 years of endurance training. Yeah. So I'm not saying start at 100K a week. I'm saying run most days. So don't go out and like a lot of people, I think when they hear 100 milers, like I need to go out and do a 30 miler on Saturday and then a 20 miler on Sunday and this, that, and the other thing. And maybe occasionally in a training cycle that will come up, very rarely. But I think most of it is about, 6 miles on Tuesday, 10 miles on Wednesday, like doing it every day with a rest day. Rest day is very important. Rest day
One
is key.
rest day.
At least one rest day and like one like lighter day is how my week is structured. But like it's so important to actually get in the everyday volume, not just those monster runs that leave you cracked for the entire week.
Very
and
good recommendation.
And a lot of the people you run with, right? Like it's these like big like Strava impressive runs where it's like I did 30 miles and this like every weekend it seems like.
Yeah, my running is very boring. Like
mostly. Sometimes you have excitement.
Yeah.
Stuff, yeah.
But I call it my fancy business runs where it's all business, nothing fancy. I do the most boring training on the planet and it works.
If I can add, like the one thing we do a lot in our goal setting is we do 2 years goals and sometimes they're even longer. Molly's, when she wanted to do Leadville for the 100 miler, her coach David said like, you can do it, but like, would you believe, this was actually on a podcast of ours, like 3 years before you did Leadville.
Yeah.
And he said like, but if you give yourself 3 years to do it, I think you can win it. And David is very confident. I don't know if you know David Roche, but he's like very exuberant. But I think that like really aligns with like we talk about 2 years goals where it's like, what if we just like didn't do the 100 miler this year? So this person you're talking about, like, what if we put that on next year? And this year we put whatever you think, a 50 miler, a 50K. We're building up the training volume, consistency, some race experience, some fueling experience, so that then there's lots of fun adventures leading up to that. We have something to do next year as well. We've already decided, but we're also making sure we do a great job with it, right? And that maybe it's like something we can continue to do versus like one time I did a 100 miler and then I never ran again or something, right?
Makes sense. But I didn't know you were coached by David. We were actually talking to Hans Troyer, who's also coached by him.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, David is the best. Most happy coach on the entire planet.
Very cool.
Nice.
Well, thanks so much, guys, for your time. And maybe one last thing. Where can listeners find you if they want to learn more, follow you guys, be coached by you?
Yeah, they can look up Consummate Athlete is probably the best way to find us. And then Strong Girl Publishing for Molly's books. If any of those sound interesting, those are available pretty much anywhere you buy books as well. So you can also search if Shred Girls or those type of things. But and then on Instagram is probably the best social for us. And I'm at Peter Glassford.
I'm at Molly J. Hurford and then at Consummate Athlete at Strong Girl Publishing. So very easy to find on the interwebs. And side note, I'm so excited to get you two on our podcast next.
Same.
So we'll have
Yes.
to come listen to that too.
Absolutely, we'll plan.
Yeah. Great. Thank you so much, guys. And
Thank you. This has been so fun.
talk to you soon. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for tuning in to Human Endurance. We hope you have enjoyed this episode. If you like the show, don't forget to rate it and hit the subscribe button whatever you're listening to it. This helps us to reach a bigger audience. Thank you and see you next time.